My name is Martins Calloway, and until that Tuesday, I believed I had a simple life. Not perfect, not extraordinary, just stable. The kind of life people don't question, the kind of life you trust. I drove a dented Ford F-150 that I kept telling myself I'd fix one day. I had a small circle, a predictable routine, and a wife I thought I understood better than anyone else in the world, Rebecca. Calloway.ceo.brilliant.sharp, in a way that made people nervous in meetings and impressed at the same time. She built her company from nothing. I watched it happen. Late nights, early mornings, calls that never seemed to end. I was there for all of it, quietly in the background, proud in a way I didn't always know how to express. I loved her in the simple ways. I knew how she took her coffee. I knew which side of the bed she preferred, even though she'd pretend it. Didn't matter. I knew the face she made when she wasn't really listening, but didn't want to be rude, or at least I thought I knew. That Tuesday didn't feel important when it started. There was no warning, no strange behavior, no message. That didn't make sense. Nothing. Just an ordinary day. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because when everything feels normal, you don't see what's coming. Around noon, I decided to do something I didn't usually do. I was going to surprise her. Nothing dramatic. Just lunch, pad thai, extra peanuts, her favorite. I remember standing in that restaurant, waiting for the order, smiling like an idiot to myself, thinking about how she'd react. Maybe she'd laugh, maybe she'd be impressed, maybe she'd just roll her eyes and say I was being dramatic. But she'd smile. She always smiled at me like that, or at least, she used to. I drove downtown, parked outside her building, grabbed the bag, and walked inside. And that's where everything started to fall apart. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect from a place like that: high ceilings, cold marble floors, glass everywhere, soft music playing, like someone had decided silence was too honest. It wasn't my world, but I'd been there before. I walked up to the front desk like I belonged, because I did. Or at least I thought I did. The security guard looked at me. Big guy, solid build. The kind of man who doesn't miss details. His name tag, said Dennis. He didn't smile. Do you have an appointment? He asked. I lifted the bag slightly. I'm here to see Rebecca Calloway, I said. I'm her husband. There was a pause, and I need you to understand something about that. Pause. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't him checking something. It was something else, something heavier. Like he already knew something I didn't. And then he laughed. Not loud, not aggressive, just enough to make my chest tighten, because people don't laugh like that unless they think you're wrong, sir, he said, trying to stay professional. I see Mrs. Calloway's husband every day. For a second, I didn't react because my brain refused to accept the sentence. It just sat there, unprocessed. Then he pointed behind me. Certain, there he is. I turned around, and in that moment, everything inside me tried to fix what I was seeing, tried to make it make sense. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was someone else. But no, because the man walking out of the elevator wasn't me. Not even close. He was taller, better dressed, confident in a way that didn't need to be proven. The kind of man who didn't look around to see who was watching, because he already knew people were. He stepped forward, ending a call, adjusting his jacket slightly, and then he looked at me and paused. Just slightly. But enough for me to know. This wasn't random. I don't know what took over me in that moment. Pride, shock, something else. But instead of walking away, I walked toward him. I smiled, held out my hand. Good to finally meet you, I said. Even now. I don't know why I said that. Maybe I needed to see how he'd react. Maybe I needed to hear something. Anything. He looked at my hand, then at my face, then at my face. Then he shook it. Firm, controlled, like he had done this before. And then he leaned in slightly, close enough that no one else could hear, and he said something that changed everything. We need to talk now. That was the moment, the exact moment where my life split into before and after. A smarter man would have walked away. A calmer man would have laughed it off. A wiser man would have called his wife right then and there. I didn't do any of those things. I followed him across the street into a coffee shop, because when reality breaks like that, you don't walk away. You need answers, even if those answers destroy you. We sat across from each other, and for a few seconds, Neither of us spoke. I studied him, he studied me, like we were both trying to figure out what the other knew. Finally, he reached into his jacket, pulled something out, and placed it on the table. A badge. I stared at it, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I looked up at him. You're FBI. I asked. He nodded once.com, like this was normal, like this happened every day. And you've been pretending to be my wife's husband, I said slowly. For how long? He didn't hesitate. 22 months. I laughed. I couldn't help it, not because it was funny, but because it wasn't, because my brain didn't have another response. Ready? 22 months, I repeated. We've been married for 6 years. He nodded again, and something in his expression shifted slightly. Not sympathy, but close. Mr. Calloway, he said quietly, your wife is not who you think she is. And just like that, everything I believed about my life started to come apart, slowly, quietly, completely. And the worst part? I was only at the beginning. And by the time that man across the table told me my wife wasn't who I thought she was, something inside me had already started to shift. Not break, not yet, just shift. Like a crack forming under pressure, invisible at first, but spreading. Slowly, dangerously, I sat there staring at him, trying to hold on to something real, something solid, because if what he was saying was true, then nothing in my life was what I thought it was. I think you'd better start talking, I said. My voice sounded calm. It wasn't, not even close. He nodded once, like he had expected that answer, then leaned back slightly in his chair. Not relaxed, just controlled. Before I say anything else, he said, you need to understand something. Everything I'm about to tell you has been part of an active federal investigation for almost 2 years. I didn't respond. I just watched him, because the words were already starting to feel heavy. 2 years? That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was time. Planning. Secrets. Your wife, he continued, Rebecca Calloway, is connected to a financial network we've been tracking across multiple states. I shook my head immediately. No, I said, not loudly, not aggressively, just instinctively. Because some part of me still believed this had to be wrong. You've got the wrong person. He didn't argue, didn't push, didn't react at all. Instead, he reached into his jacket again. And this time what he pulled out wasn't a badge. It was a photograph. Folded slightly at the edges, handled too many times, he slid it across the table toward me. I didn't want to look at it. I did anyway. And the moment I did, that crack inside me spread a little further. It was Rebecca. No doubt about it. Same face, same posture. Same way she held herself, like the world needed to keep up with her. But the place wasn't familiar. A parking garage, dim lighting, concrete walls, and she wasn't alone. She was handing an envelope to a man I had never seen before. I stared at it longer than I should have, trying to find something that made it fake, something that made it not real. There was nothing. When was this taken? I asked quietly. 18 months ago, he said. Thursday evening, 18 months. My brain started doing something strange then, connecting things, replaying moments. That same week, Rebecca had told me she was traveling, Boston conference. 2 days. I remembered it clearly because I had repainted the kitchen while she was gone. I even remembered the color. She came back, smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said, Martins, it's perfect. I swallowed hard. I said, it wasn't a question. No, he replied, she wasn't. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything I wasn't saying. Full of everything I was starting to understand. Who's the man? I asked. His answer came immediately. Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to me, at least. At that moment, he runs a network. The agent continued, shell companies, fake investments, layered transactions designed to look legitimate. I leaned back slightly, trying to breathe, trying to keep up. And my wife? I asked. He held my gaze carefully. She's been facilitating those transactions through her firm. The words landed slowly, like they needed time to sink in. Facilitating, I repeated. You mean helping? Yes, helping. My wife. The woman I had trusted with everything. The woman I thought I knew better than anyone. Helping move money that wasn't clean. Helping build something illegal. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. That's not possible, I said. But this time, it didn't sound convincing. Not even to me. We've tracked approximately $47 million through Callaway Vance over the last 2 years, he said. 47 million. He said it like it was nothing, like he was reading numbers off a page. But to me, it didn't even feel real. It felt distant, like it belonged to someone else's life, not mine, not ours. I picked up my coffee, put it down, picked it up again, because I needed something to do, something normal. My wife built that company, I said slowly. She worked for everything. She has. He didn't interrupt, didn't argue, just waited, and that made it worse. Because it meant he didn't need to convince me. The evidence already existed. I just hadn't seen it yet. She made a choice, he said after a moment, and something about the way he said it. That word, choice. That's what hit me, because mistakes happen, accidents happen. But choices, those are deliberate. Those are decisions. That's not enough, I said, leaning forward slightly. You don't sit here and tell me my wife is involved in something like this without showing me something real, something solid, something undeniable. He nodded, like he had been waiting for that. Then he reached into his portfolio again, slower this time, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He placed it on the table, turned toward me. I looked down, and for a second, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I did, and everything inside me went still. It was a bank. Record a transfer, amount $420,000. My name was on it, my account. I blinked once, twice, trying to process it. This is wrong, I said immediately. I didn't make this. I know, he replied. I looked up at him, and yet, it's in my name. Yes, the word hung there, heavy, uncomfortable, dangerous. This was processed 14 months ago, he said. From your personal account, 14 months. Another date, another memory, another piece of my life being quietly rewritten. I didn't authorize this, I said again. My voice was flatter now, colder, because something else was starting to form. Beneath the shock, understanding, slow, unwelcome, but undeniable. He leaned forward slightly. Mr. Callaway, from where we're standing, this document could easily be used to suggest that you're part of this operation. That's when it hit me fully. Not just the betrayal, not just the lies, but the design. This wasn't random. This wasn't careless. This was planned. I sat back slowly. My wife set me up, I said. He didn't confirm it directly, but he didn't deny it either. Someone created a contingency, he said carefully. A fallback, in case something went wrong. I let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it, because suddenly, everything made sense in the worst possible way. The shared accounts, the financial decisions, I never questioned. The trust, all of it. It wasn't just marriage, it was access. And I had given it to her freely, without hesitation, without doubt. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them completely. And she used that. I leaned forward again. Slowly. What do you need from me? I asked. The word surprised even me, because somewhere between the shock and the anger, something else had taken its place. Focus. If my life was falling apart, I needed to understand why, and I needed control. Even if it was just a little. He didn't hesitate. Access, he said. To what? A secure server inside your wife's company. I stared at him. You want me to walk into her building and help you build a case against her? Yes, just like that. Simple, direct. No hesitation. I looked away for a moment. Out the window, people walking past, talking, laughing, living normal lives. No idea what was happening just a few feet away. No idea how quickly everything could change. I turned back to him. And if I don't, I asked. He held my gaze. Then this investigation continues without you. A pause, and your name stays attached to that transfer. There it was. Not a threat, not exactly, but close enough. I nodded slowly, because I understood this wasn't optional. Not really, I was already in it, whether I liked it or not. I took a breath, deep, steady. Tell me what I need to do. And just like that, I stopped being a husband, trying to understand his wife, and became something else entirely. A man standing in the middle of a lie, finally ready to see how deep it goes. And I had no idea yet just how far it would take me. By the time I said those words, tell me what I need to do, something inside me had already crossed a line. There's a moment when confusion turns into clarity. Not the kind that makes you feel better, the kind that makes things worse. But sharper, clearer, more dangerous. Because once you see the truth, you can't go back to not seeing it. The agent, Daniel Rohr, didn't react like I had just agreed to something extreme. He didn't nod in approval. Didn't thank me. He just accepted it. Like this was always how it was going to go. Like I was already part of the plan. "Your wife has a private internal server," he said, his voice low, steady, separate from the main network. I listened carefully. Not because I trusted him, but because I didn't have a choice anymore. "It's air-gapped," he continued. "No external access. That's where the real authorization logs are stored, the ones we can't reach." I leaned back slightly. "So, you want me to get into that system?" "Yes. And pull. What, exactly?" "Everything." There was no hesitation in his voice. No doubt, which meant whatever was on that server was the truth. The real truth, not the version I had been living. I nodded slowly. "Where is it?" "14th floor," he said. Restricted access, of course it was. Nothing about this was going to be easy. "And how exactly do I get in?" I asked. He reached into his jacket again and placed something small on the table. A keycard, plain white, no markings. "This will get you through the elevator access point," he said. I looked at it, then back at him. "You've been planning this." "For a while," he replied. There it was again, that quiet confirmation. I wasn't the plan. I was the missing piece. That realization didn't sit well. Not at all. "How long do I have?" I asked. "Tomorrow night." "Why then?" "Your wife has a board dinner," he said. "She won't be in the building." Of course she wouldn't. Everything about her life? Structured, planned, controlled, even now. "Even in this," I nodded once, "and the security?" I asked. "The daytime guard you met, Dennis, he's not part of this," Rohr said. "But the night guard is." That made me pause. "You've got people inside her company. Let's just say we've been patient. 2 years of patience. 2 years of lies. 2 years of my life being something I didn't understand. And what happens if something goes wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I gave a quiet, humorless smile. "Right," I said. "Got it?" We sat there for a moment, neither of us speaking, because the reality of what I had just agreed to was finally settling in. I wasn't just uncovering the truth. I was stepping directly into it. And once I did that, there was no stepping back. "Why me?" I asked suddenly. He looked at me carefully. "Because you can get closer than anyone else," he said. "Because she trusts you." I let out a small breath. "Yeah," I said quietly. She did. That word "did" felt heavier than anything else I had said all day. Because somewhere between the photo, the bank record, and this conversation, the version of my wife I loved was already gone. Or maybe she had never been real at all. I stared up slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. "I need some time," I said. He nodded. "You have 24 hours. I picked up the keycard, held it in my hand. It felt light, too light, for something that was about to change everything. "Tomorrow night?" I said. "Yes." I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. And for the first time since this started, I didn't look back. The drive home felt longer than usual, not because of traffic, not because of distance, but because my mind wouldn't stop. Every memory, every moment, every small detail was being re-examined, replayed, questioned. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a minute. Engine still running, hands on the wheel, just sitting, trying to slow everything down, trying to breathe. The house looked the same. Nothing had changed, but it didn't feel the same. Not anymore. I stepped inside. Quiet, still, familiar, and yet completely different. I walked into the kitchen. The same kitchen I had repainted 18 months ago. The same kitchen she had stood in, smiling, telling me it was perfect. I leaned against the counter, closed my eyes for a second, and asked myself a question. I wasn't ready to answer. How much of it was real? Because if she lied about Boston, if she lied about the money, if she set me up without hesitation, then what was left? What part of our life was actually true? I opened my eyes and looked around. Everything looked normal. And that's what made it worse. Because lies don't look like lies when you're living inside them, they look like life. I walked over to the sink, ran the water. Not because I needed to, but because I needed the sound. Something steady, something real. I stayed there for a while, just thinking. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just clearly and slowly. That clarity turned into something else. Not sadness, not yet. Something colder, something sharper. Understanding, because this wasn't just betrayal, this was strategy. She didn't just lie to me, she used me. Every shared account, every decision. I trusted her with every time I said, "You handle it." She had access. That $420,000 transfer, that wasn't random. That was protection. For her, at my expense, I turned off the water, stood there in silence, and made a decision. Not emotional, not reactive. Calculated. If she had been planning for 2 years, then I was done reacting. I was going to start thinking the way she did, the way people like her do, carefully, quietly. I walked into the living room and sat down. My phone was on the table. I picked it up, looked at her contact. Rebecca, 4. A second. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could call her right now, ask her everything. Demand answers. End it. But I didn't, because something told me that wouldn't give me the truth. People like her don't tell the truth when they're cornered. They adjust, they redirect, they control the situation, and I wasn't going to give her that chance. Not yet. I put the phone down, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow night? That was the moment. That was the line. Everything before it was ignorance. Everything after it would be truth. No matter how ugly it was, and for the first time since this started, I wasn't afraid of that truth. I wanted it. Because whatever was waiting for me on that server, it was the real version of my life, not the one I had been living, the real one. And I needed to see it, even if it destroyed everything. That night, when Rebecca came home, I was ready. Not emotionally, but mentally, prepared, focused. Walked in like she always did, confident, composed, like the world outside didn't touch her. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey," she said casually, "did you have a good day?" I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I wasn't seeing my wife. I was seeing a stranger, someone I didn't understand, someone who had built a life around me that wasn't real. It was. "Interesting," I said. She raised an eyebrow slightly, but didn't push. "Good," she said, walking past me, setting her bag down, moving like everything was normal, like nothing had changed. And I realized something in that moment. She was good, very good, because if I didn't know what I knew, I would never have questioned her, not once, not ever. And that scared me more than anything else. We talked that night about small things, normal things, dinner, work, plans. All of it felt like a performance, and I played my part perfectly, because now I understood the game. And tomorrow night, I was going to change it completely. And as I lay there in bed, next to the woman I thought I knew, I stared at the ceiling in the dark and waited. Not for answers, but for the moment. Everything finally comes out. And I had no idea, yet, just how dangerous that moment was going to be. And by the time the clock hit 9:40 p.m. the next night, there was no version of my life left that felt familiar. Everything had narrowed down to one. Moment.1, building.1 decision. I sat in my truck across the street from Rebecca's office. Engine off, hands resting on the wheel. Watching the glass tower reflect the city lights like nothing inside it could ever be dirty. Checked the time again, 9:42. Her board dinner had started 20 minutes ago. She'd be surrounded by executives, investors, people who saw her as untouchable. That thought almost made me smile, because while they were raising glasses to her success, I was about to walk into the part of her life she had buried the deepest. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the white key card Daniel Rohr had given me. Still plain, still light, but now it felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. I stepped. Out of the truck, the night air hit differently. Colder, sharper, sharper. Or maybe that was just me. Every step, steady, controlled. Like I had done this 100 times before, even though I hadn't, even though everything inside me knew. This was the point of no return. The lobby was quieter than it had been the day before. Lights dimmed slightly. The music softer, different guard. just like Roar had said. The man behind the desk barely looked up. "Evening," I said calmly. He nodded once, didn't ask. Questions didn't stop me, that told me everything. This was already in motion. I walked to the elevator access panel, slid the keycard through. Nothing happened. Then a soft green light, a click, access granted. I exhaled slowly and stepped inside. The elevator doors closed with a quiet, final sound, and as it started moving up, I felt it. That shift, that internal moment where doubt tries one last time to stop you. You can still walk away. You don't have to do this. But I ignored it, because walking away meant living in a lie, and I was done with that. The numbers climbed 5, 8, 11. The doors opened, and everything changed. The 14th floor didn't look like the rest of the building. No open WORKSPACES, no glass walls, no warm lighting, just a long hallway, dim, quiet, controlled, the kind of place designed not to be seen. I stepped out slowly, the door closed behind me, and the silence was immediate heavy. Every sound I made felt louder than it should. My footsteps, my breathing, even the slight movement of my jacket. At the end of the hallway, a secured door, no handle, just a panel. I walked toward it, each step deliberate, focused. This was it. I slid the keycard again, pause, then dash, green, another, click, the door unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was colder, not just in temperature, but in feeling. Rows of servers, soft humming, filling the space, lights blinking in steady patterns. Alive, watching, holding something important, something hidden. I stood there for a moment, taking it in, because this was where the truth lived. Not in conversations, not in memories, in data, in records, in things that don't lie. I moved to the main terminal, a single workstation in the center, waiting. I sat down, the screen lit up as I touched the keyboard. Password. Protected. Of course. I stared at it, then reached into my pocket. Pulled out the small device. Roar had given me earlier that day. Plug it in, he had said. It'll handle the rest. I hesitated for a second, not because I didn't trust it, but because once I did this, there was no undo. Then I inserted it. The screen flickered. Lines of code started. Moving fast, precise, bypassing, breaking through, and in less than 30 seconds, access by full access. I leaned in slightly, heart steady, mind focused, folders encrypted, logs. Financial records. Internal communications, everything laid out in front of me. And for a moment, I didn't open anything, because this was the last second. Before I knew, the last second before everything became real. Then I clicked. The first file was labeled simply Authorization Log, Internal Transfers. I opened it, and there it was. Dates, amounts, accounts, clear, undeniable. My eyes moved quickly, scanning, processing, until I saw it. $420,000. The same transfer Roar had shown me, but this time, there was more. Authorization code, access ID. User credentials, and the name tied to it was mine. Martins Calloway. I stared at it, not shocked, not confused, just confirming, because now I knew exactly what she had done. She didn't just move the money, she made it look like I did. A clean setup. If anyone ever looked, I was responsible. I exhaled slowly, then opened the next file, Communications. Private channel. This one took longer to load, heavily encrypted, protected, for a reason. When it opened, I felt something shift, because this wasn't numbers. This was conversation. Messages between Rebecca and someone else. No names, just identifiers. But the tone told me everything. Strategic. Cold. Calculated. I started reading. Line by line, and with each one, the version of my wife I knew disappeared a little more. She's ready. Transfer is clean. He won't question it. That line made me stop. I read it again, slower. He won't question it. Not might not, not probably. One single quotes T, because she knew me that well, because she understood exactly how much I trusted her, and she used that. I kept reading, and then I saw something that changed everything. A message. Short. Simple, but devastating. After this, he's no longer needed. I froze, not physically, but inside, because those words weren't about money, they weren't about business, they were about me. I leaned back slightly, staring at the screen, letting it sink in. Because betrayal is one thing, being used is another, but being discarded, planned, scheduled, that single quotes is something else entirely. I looked at the TIMSDS recent.very. Recent. This wasn't past tense, this was now. This was happening. I scrolled further, faster now, looking for context, for answers, for anything that explained what no longer needed meant, and then I found it. A file attached to one of the messages. I opened it, a document detailed, structured, a contingency plan. And right there, in clear professional language, was my name, Martins Calloway, subject of investigation, potential liability, and the recommendation was simple. Redirect financial responsibility. Initiate legal exposure. Remove association. I let out a quiet breath, because there it was, the full picture. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was setting me up to take the fall. The money, the accounts, everything. And once that happened, she would walk away clean, successful, untouchable, while I would be left explaining something I didn't do. I sat there in silence, the hum of the servers filling the room, steady, unchanging, unlike everything else, and slowly, very slowly, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not panic, something colder, clarity, because now I knew everything. Not pieces, not guesses, the truth, complete, and that truth came with a choice. I could walk out of here, give this to the FBI, and let them handle it. Or I could do something else, something she wouldn't expect, something that didn't just expose the truth, but turned it back on her. Because if there's one thing I had learned from Rebecca, it's this: the most dangerous move is the one no one sees coming. I reached for the keyboard again, not to read, to act, because this story wasn't ending the way she planned. Not anymore. And as I sat there, inside the room she thought no one would ever enter, looking at the life she built on lies, I made a decision. Quiet, final, irreversible. If she wanted a game, then she was about to realize something she had missed. She wasn't the only one who could play, and this time she picked the wrong man to use. I stood up from that chair, inside that cold server room. I wasn't the same man who had walked in, because the truth doesn't just change what you know, it changes who you are. I looked at the screen one last time, the messages, the plan. My name, sitting inside a document that reduced my entire life to a liability that needed to be removed. And instead of reacting, I started thinking the way she would, the way people like Rebecca always think. 3 steps ahead, always assuming control, always assuming they're the smartest person in the room. That was her mistake, because she never imagined I'd see this. Never imagined I'd be sitting here, reading the version of my life she had already decided to end. So I did the one thing she wouldn't expect. I didn't just copy the files, I changed them carefully, precisely. Not enough to raise alarms immediately, just enough to shift the direction. Opened the authorization logs again, the $420,000. Transfer my name attached to it. I stared at it for a second. Then replaced the access credentials. Not with random data, with hers, Rebecca. Calloway.clean.seamless, undetectable at a glance. Then I moved to the communication logs. The private messages, I didn't delete them. That would be obvious. Instead, I mirrored them, created duplicates, redirected internal flags. So when someone went looking, the trail wouldn't lead to me, it would lead to her. Every step, every decision, every calculated move back to the person who created it. I worked in silence, focused, controlled, no hesitation anymore, because this wasn't revenge. This was correction. She wrote the story, I was just fixing the ending when I was done. I removed the device. The screen returned to normal. Clean, quiet, like nothing had happened, but everything had. I stood up slowly, took one last look around that room, and for the first time since this started, I felt something close to calm. Not peace, not yet, but balance, because now, the truth wasn't just something I knew, it was something I controlled. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and left the 14th floor like I had never been there. The drive home was different. Not heavy, not chaotic, clear, focused, because I knew what came next. This wasn't over, not even close. Now it was time to finish it. Rebecca was already home when I walked in, sitting on the couch, shoes off, a glass of wine in her hand, relaxed, like her world was exactly the way she wanted it. She looked up at me, smiled. That same familiar smile, the one that used to mean something. "How was your night?" she asked. I set my keys down, took a breath, and walked in slowly. "Productive," I said. She nodded slightly, took a sip of her wine. "Mine too," she replied. Of course it was. Everything was going exactly according to her plan, or at least, she thought it was. I sat across from her, not next to her. That was the first thing she noticed. A small shift, but enough. Her eyes studied me for a second longer than usual. "Everything okay?" she asked. There it was. The instinct, the awareness. Could feel something was off. She just didn't know what. "Yeah," I said calmly. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something." She tilted her head slightly. "Curious. Double quotes about what?" I held her gaze. Didn't look away. "Boston," I said. Just one word, but it landed. I saw it. That tiny pause, that fraction of a second where her expression almost changed almost, but she recovered fast. Too fast for someone who wasn't used to lying. "What about it?" she asked smoothly. I leaned back slightly, watched her, just wondering how it went. I said, "Anything interesting happen?" She smiled, casual, controlled. "Meetings," she said. "Investors, nothing exciting." I nodded slowly. "Nothing at all?" "Martins," she said lightly. "It was a business trip." There it was again. Perfect delivery, no cracks, no hesitation. If I hadn't seen the files, I would have believed her. Without question, I let a small silence settle between us then. I said something that changed everything. "I know about the transfer." No anger, no raised voice, just truth. Her hand stopped moving. The glass froze halfway to her lips, and this time, she didn't recover. Immediately, because this wasn't a guess. This wasn't suspicion. This was direct, precise, dangerous. She slowly set the glass down, looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Not guilt, not fear, calculation. "Much do you know?" she asked quietly. I gave a slight smile. "Enough." That answer did something. Could see it. She started adjusting, rebuilding the situation in her head, trying to find control again. "You shouldn't have gone looking," she said. Not defensive, not emotional, just factual, like I had made a mistake. I almost laughed funny, I said. "I was thinking the same thing about you." That hit. Not hard, but enough. We sat there in silence for a moment, two people in the same room, living in completely different realities. Then she leaned forward slightly, her voice lower now, serious. "You don't understand what you're involved in," she said. I nodded. "You're right," I replied. "I didn't." I leaned in slightly to held her gaze. "But now I do." And then I said the one thing she wasn't ready for. "They're already building a case." That was it. That was the moment her control slipped. Not completely, but enough. Because now the situation had changed. Now it wasn't just me knowing. Now it was bigger, real, dangerous. "You talked to someone," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, who?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because at that exact moment, there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp knocks. Controlled, official. Her eyes flicked toward it, then back to me, and in that second, everything connected for her, everything. I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it. Daniel Rohr stood there. Calm, focused exactly. The same as the first time I saw him. There was no confusion, no misunderstanding behind him. 2 more agents, silent, ready, double quotes. "Evening, Mr. Calloway," he said. Then his eyes shifted slightly past me. "Mrs. Calloway." I stepped aside, let them in, and just like that, the life she built started collapsing. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, the way real things fall apart. Rebecca stood up slowly, her posture still perfect, her expression controlled. But her eyes were different now, because she knew this was real. "This is a mistake," she said. Professional Sharp.ROR didn't react. "We have a warrant," he replied calmly, "for financial fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." Each word landed precise, final dot. She looked at me, and for the first time, there was something real there. Not love, not anger, something else. Something else. Recognition. "You did this," she said quietly. I met her gaze. "No," I said, "you did." Silence filled the room, heavy, complete. And in that silence, everything that we were ended, just like that. They took her out 10 minutes later. No scene, no shouting, just quiet footsteps and a door closing. I stood there alone in a house that suddenly felt different again. But this time, not because it was a lie, because it was empty. Real, finally real. I walked over to the couch, sat down, looked at the glass of wine she had left behind, still half full, untouched since that moment. And I realized something. The hardest part wasn't losing her. It was realizing I never really had her to begin with. A week later, I sat in the same truck, same street, same building, but everything was different. The case was public. Now news, headlines, stories about the brilliant CEO who fell. People shocked, people confused, people asking how no one saw it. I did, I just saw it. Too late, but not too late to stop it. Roar had told me I did the right thing, that I helped prevent something bigger. Maybe, maybe not. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about something simpler, truth, because in the end, that's all this was about. The difference between what looks real and what actually is. I started the engine, looked at the building one last time, then drove away. Not running, not escaping, just moving forward, because some stories don't end with justice or revenge, they end with clarity. And sometimes that's enough.